Hi, everybody. If you are joining us, welcome from all over the world. I'll give people a few minutes to come in, but as a reminder, I am Rana el Kaliouby. I'm co-founder and CEO of Affectiva. We are an MIT spinout on a mission to humanize technology. This is the fourth installation of my virtual book tour. We are actually officially 6 days away from book launch. So my book and memoir, Girl Decoded, published by Penguin Random House, goes on, you can pre-order it, but it goes on sale on April 21st, next Tuesday, which is very exciting. It's been 3 years in the working and in the making, and it's been a labor of love for me. And yeah, I have a lot of mixed emotions. I'm very excited, but it feels super surreal and very daunting. But we're approaching launch day. I hope you are all staying well and staying safe. We're all on about 4 weeks of social distancing. I'm here working from home, pivoting to a virtual book tour, and my kids are learning from home. Trying to just be kind of first and foremost grateful that we are still able to go on with our lives amidst all of the challenges. And I'm just trying, I just tell everybody on my team and in my family to be grateful and to be humble and to be empathetic, and kind of recognize that it's challenging for all of us out there. So thank you again for joining us. My guest today is Harvard University professor of psychology and best-selling author of Stumbling on Happiness, Professor Dan Gilbert. Dan and I met over 10 years ago, and to say I'm a fan of his work is an understatement. Dan's work has influenced a lot of my thinking at Affectiva. We've collaborated on and off on a number of projects to use our technology to quantify things like happiness and other mental and behavioral states. And it's a real honor to have you here, Dan, today. You have read an early version of my book and very kind of gratefully blurbed the book as well. So thank you again for agreeing to do this. And we thought we would have Dan ask me some questions about the book, and that will hopefully launch into an interesting conversation about human-centric technology, my journey, happiness, the times we live in. So please post your questions, and we will make sure we get to them. Dan.
Great. Thanks, Rana. It's so fun to join you here and to join you anywhere, but to join you virtually in front of so many people, and especially on the cusp of this amazing occasion of the real launch of Girl Decoded. I have a lot of friends who write a lot of books, and they send them to me and they say, will you blurb them? And as long as they're not terrible, I can usually find it in my heart to say something for the back cover. Before I blurb a book, I always read it. I want to make sure something I don't feel about having given a thumbs up to. And that's usually a task. It takes a week, 2 or 3 or months to slog through them. This is such an this book, and I was in California. I went and sat out by the pool, and I didn't come in until I'd finished. I couldn't put the book down. It was only a description of the advent of this technological industry that you have participated in, but just stirring and amazing you along. I wrote you an email afterwards and said, Rana, I finished this book and I realize I've never known you because this book is so personal and so revealing. I just thought it was beautifully written. It was wildly informative. And this is where I want to jump off. It was inspirational. It's a book that the day it launches, I will send to my 17-year-old granddaughter to remind her of what women can do and the kinds of barriers they can break. So I just wanted to start with that, because what in the world makes a nice Egyptian girl decide that she's going to basically break every rule of a family she adores and a culture she feels very much a part of to go on this quest to humanize technology. Where did this even come from?
It came from this, and thank you so much. These words mean so much to me because I really am a huge fan of your work and respect everything you do. So I am so grateful for these words. And I did write the book in the hopes that it will inspire many people around the world to forge their own path in the same way I did. But especially young women. I am, as you would expect, I'm especially passionate about kind of supporting and inspiring and motivating young women. So I do hope your granddaughter gets a chance to read the book, and I hope I meet her in person too at some point. For me, it was this earlier realization that technology changes the way we connect and communicate with one another. It's always been, the common theme is about this human connection. And so when I first got to Cambridge University to do my PhD in computer science, mainly thinking I needed to do a PhD to go back and become faculty at the American University in Cairo, it just unleashed this passion for building artificial emotional intelligence and just getting machines to understand what I call understand human, just understand how we humans connect, how we behave, how we express our emotions. Recognizing that this will change industries, but ultimately it will transform human-machine interfaces and human-to-human communication as well.
Yeah, today, everything you're saying seems obvious. Of course, we want machines that can do this. Of course, they will play an important role in our lives. This was totally non-obvious. Even when I first met you, you were a student at MIT, and I came to Roz Picard's lab and saw some of the things you were working on. You guys were out in the wilderness. Nobody thought the kinds of questions you were asking or the things you were developing were really very important. What changed in the world to make everybody suddenly realize this isn't just important, it's the center of what we need to be doing?
Absolutely. In fact, when I first started doing research in this space, and especially when we started Affectiva over 10 years ago, Roz and I would avoid the word emotions altogether. We called it the E word, right? And when it came to naming the company, we didn't want to have emotions in the name of the company. And so we kind of picked a synonym, which is affect, right? Affectiva, to steer away from this entire idea of kind of computers that can understand emotions, because people didn't really appreciate the role emotions and emotional intelligence plays in our day-to-day communication, right? So I think now there's a lot more recognition that emotions influences our decision-making, our memory, our learning, our stress, our sense of stress and well-being, how we sleep, how we eat, everything, our relationships. And that was maybe not as, that was kind of not as universal, I think, as it is now. I'm sure you've kind of seen that in your work too, right?
Well, actually, I'm chuckling a little bit as you talk, because the things you're saying have been obvious to every poet, playwright, grandmother, and psychologist for 2,000 years. What you're really saying is that suddenly this stuff became clear to technologists, to computer scientists, to mathematicians. People who've really had their heads buried in the technology and the mathematics of things have discovered what really the rest of the world has known forever, which is the matters of the heart are among the most important matters there are. So it's wonderful to see, from my perspective, wonderful to see all of these people finally understanding the deep meaning of our psychology and why we can't run away from it. It's the centerpiece of everything we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then I think the kind of core enabling technologies also kind of transformed over the last 10, 15, 20 years, right? So when I started doing this research at Cambridge and then at MIT, we didn't even have smartphones, right? We didn't even have, remember the big blurry kind of webcams that we used to stick on top, yep. Right? So we didn't have deep learning. We didn't have machine learning. We didn't have powerful kind of devices. And so I think that's been a core enabling set of technologies that has allowed that has allowed the world to see why we need human-centric devices. We didn't have Siri, we didn't have Amazon Alexa. All of these things now exist, and I think more than ever people realize, oh my goodness, these devices need to now interface and interact with us just the same way we interact with one another, through conversation, through empathy, and through perception.
Can I ask you, this is a little bit of a science fiction question, but I started my life as a science fiction writer. Before I became a psychologist, I was publishing science fiction stories. So this has occurred to me as I've learned more about your work, and certainly as I was reading Girl Decoded. Is there a chance a machine can be too emotionally intelligent? And what I mean by that is a person can't be. We love it when our friends are utterly sensitive to what we're feeling. They know just what we're thinking. They always know just what to say. But the reason we love that is we know they feel something too. Is there a chance that we might not like a machine that's so good at reading our emotions because we know it doesn't really feel anything, and so it feels like, in a sense, it's manipulating us? Is that something you ever worry about, or are we so far from that that it doesn't occupy a minute of your thought?
Both. We're definitely far from that, but it's also something we think a lot about. So imagine if you're Alexa, you wake up one day and you say, Alexa, play this song, and it says, actually, Dan, I'm not going to today. I'm in such a bad mood. Or you were mean to me yesterday and I'm still getting over it, right? I don't know if we would like that. Would you like your Alexa to challenge you like that?
Oh, this is the greatest question, because there's actually a student in my lab doing exactly the study you just described. His hunch is the reason we can't really bond with Alexa is we don't owe her anything. Real human beings have relationships. And if I'm not nice to my friend Rana, I'm going to have to apologize, and she's not going to like me for a little while. Alexa she's there and she answers questions, but she's utterly subservient. I can call her a terrible name, and then the next thing I ask is, what's the weather? And she cheerfully tells me. People aren't like that. And so he's trying to find out whether people would actually like AI a little bit more if it seemed to occasionally get pouty and say, well, that wasn't very nice of you. So I don't know.
That's really fascinating, because I also think the current version of Alexa and these conversational interfaces, it's very transactional. As you said, you ask it a question, it answers it. You let it do something, right? Whereas I think the true power of these kind of interfaces is when they really start to understand your emotional state and mental state and get to know you better, so that they can, as you know, right, like people who have higher EQs are more persuasive, they're more likable, they can actually be a conduit to behavior change. So I think the true power of these devices will be when they get to know you and can say, you know what, you're not eating really healthy right now. Let's have a conversation about this and put a plan together, and I'll hold you accountable to it. I would love that right now, because I'm not eating great. So I think that I think will change the dynamics a little bit with these interfaces. And it's fascinating to see how people respond to that, because people personalize these devices anyways, even though they have no EQ right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know me as being somebody who studied happiness, but really for the last few years in my lab, we've almost exclusively studied human conversation. And the thing about conversation that most people don't understand is they think it's about the exchange of information. Mm-hmm. Humans are using language to get things from my head to your head. That's 10% of it. 90% of it is what baboons do when they're grooming. It's just social interaction. It's just meant. Almost every human conversation can be translated as, I like you, I like you, I like you, I like you. And the person goes, I like you too, I like you too, I like you too. Most conversation is just about making each other feel valued. What we're saying is almost immaterial. And so I think my Alexa doesn't understand that, but it sounds like with your help, she's on her way.
Well, I think that's kind of ultimately where we would want to go with a lot of these, devices and conversational agents and social robotics. But let's go back to human conversation, because I think it's so relevant in our world today. Obviously, a lot of us are social distancing, and the way we communicate is virtually. So from
I'm sorry, I don't know what everybody else is seeing, but Rana froze for me. Um,